So, Karen, great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here.
We are talking with the Libera, not only executive director, but the founder of Libera, and the reason that Libera even exists as an organization and is making such an impact across West Virginia for women and girls in our community. So it's great to talk with you and get your story on why you wanted to start Libera and just learn a little bit more about your story as well. Because I have a feeling that a lot of what you experienced as a young girl and as a young woman had a part in why you wanted to start Libera. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
A question about if you could just tell us a little bit about your relationship to Appalachia or West Virginia and how Appalachia or West Virginia has influenced you as a woman.
Yeah, so I grew up in Appalachia in Coshocton, Ohio. I know that's an unusual sounding name. It's a Native American name. But in Ohio, I think we've always pronounced it Appalachia. You know, there's the big debate. But I grew up in Appalachia. And I think that impacted me because we were a small community. I think Appalachians really emphasize family and community. We were kind of in a rural place. I spent a lot of time outdoors and love the outdoors. Unfortunately, as I was growing up, we always told West Virginia jokes. But
the truth comes out.
I would say now, whenever I hear the song Country Roads, it makes me cry. All my kids were born and raised here in West Virginia, and I feel like West Virginia is home. Mm-hmm. So I really love Appalachia, and I love being part of its culture and the community, sense of community and family that it brings.
Yeah. So you grew up not in West Virginia, but in Coshocton, Ohio.
Yes.
I love that. And who did you grow up with in Ohio when you were growing up?
So my mom and dad and my sister, who's 2 years younger than me. And I always had a lot of good friends. I think that related to Libera and later in life, one thing my mom has always said about me, I remember her saying, you are so loyal. Like, you just love your friends. And I think relationships have always been a big part of my life. I'm one of those people that I would see some of my friends in high school move away, and I just never, ever wanted to move because I loved where we grew up. I loved having the friends I had, and I just couldn't bear to think about leaving those friends. So definitely friendships have always been really important to me.
Yeah. Well, clearly you did end up leaving.
I did.
Where you grew up, and you moved to West Virginia, and you mentioned that you had all your kids here and you raised your family here.
Yes.
How did you actually end up in West Virginia from Ohio?
Well, that's an interesting story. So my husband was moving to start actually a Christian group on campus at WVU. And so I wasn't married to him yet, but I kind of followed him and some of my friends here to West Virginia because of that. So
you followed those friends again?
Yes, I did.
Loyalty.
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
Came through again.
Yep.
Awesome. So you mentioned as a little girl, or when you were younger, growing up, you were very loyal, and it sounds like you were a really good friend too, or your friends have a big impact on you. How else would you describe yourself whenever little Karen, what she was like?
Little Karen. Okay, so believe it or not, I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was like 5 or 6. I used to sit around and draw dinosaurs, and I loved dinosaurs. So that was my first love, I think, was wanting to be a paleontologist. But as I
didn't know that about you. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised.
Scientist. But as I got older, I was really interested in music and art. And actually, my degree is in music education. So as I was growing up, I think I wanted to be a composer. I love being creative. So I was always, doing art projects, doing music projects, wanted to compose music, and actually have composed quite a few pieces of music over my lifetime. But also, when I got into like 7th or 8th grade, I found out that there was such a job as music therapist. And I became really interested in being a music therapist. And so, I mean, I never did that, but I feel like that's sort of related to what I'm doing in Libera, in the sense of, we really care for the mental and emotional health of the girls and young women we serve. And so I think I've kind of carried that throughout my lifetime.
Yeah, so you didn't study music therapy, but you did study music, right?
Yes, and education.
And I can't believe you haven't plugged where you went to school yet for college.
OH. Yeah, I went to Ohio State. Love Ohio State. Yeah, my parents both went to Ohio State, so I got my music education degree there. Yeah.
Were friends a big part of your time in college too?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, very strong friendships. And a number of those I still have today that I connect with. So, yes.
So how do you think some of those early childhood little Karen that wanted to be a paleontologist and then a music therapist and had friendships as a big part of what was really important to you, how did that end up here in West Virginia helping women and girls share their stories and helping to support them and themselves?
So I'm going to go back to one other thing that I did as a kid that I think is important to this story. And I lost this somewhere along the way. But when I was in 7th grade, I was always into sports too. So I was into music, art, but also sports. And in 7th grade, I realized we don't have any girls' teams. So I wanted to start a girls' track team, and I got the science teacher and the principal. I can't believe I was shy, so I can't believe I did it, but I talked to the principal and we started a girls' track team. So I always had this idea that I wanted to help girls succeed and be able to do the same things that boys are doing. And like I said, I kind of lost that along the way, but I think that had something to do with me wanting to start something for women and girls. And then if I could share a little bit of a story of something that happened to me, this is in recent years, but right before I started Libera, and this goes back to the friendship and relationship thing, 2 people that I'm very close to tried to complete suicide. And I was the person that found them, and I was the person that took them to the emergency room. And that just turned my world upside down. I really didn't know what to do, how to handle it. So I started talking with a therapist thinking, he can help me figure out how to help my friends. And as I was talking to him, pretty quickly I learned that, Karen, you need help too. And the kind of help I needed, it just uncovered some lies in my life. And lies are a big thing that we talk about in Libera, as far as uncovering the lies that are holding us back from being who we are and from being all that we could be. So the first lie that I discovered in talking with my therapist was that I was a kind of judgmental person. I didn't really respect people for who they are. And that was because I had this lie that I wasn't enough. And it's interesting, right? Because in 7th grade, here I am trying to form a girls' track team and, going out there and living out who I am. But I lost that along the way. And I think that happens to a lot of women and girls. And then I realized I had this addiction to people pleasing. And that also came from the lie, Karen, you're not good enough, so you have to earn people's love and approval. I also saw around me, women and girls being people pleasers. And then the final thing I learned was that I was repressed, that I wasn't able to really use my voice as a woman. I wasn't really living out who Karen is. I lost that along the way. And I kind of gave that example to my kids too, which is unfortunate. And hopefully my kids, I've had big conversations with them. Hopefully I've been able to help them see that I don't want them to be repressed. I want them to live out who they really are. But those lies got in the way, and it all started with the things that happened to my friends. By the way, they're doing well now. So, but that was what led me to the idea of how can we help women and girls find more freedom. And as I talked to my friend group, I saw that the women in my friend group, friends again, were all kind of in the same place I was. They had these lies that were holding them back. And the lies in their lives were stronger than the truth of who they really were, stronger than their dreams. And so I wanted to start something that could help women and girls be more free and live out who they really are, live out their dreams. And I actually read a book around this time that I might share a quote from, because I think it really sort of summarizes what the issues are. So I read this book about two girls. It's called The Invention of Wings. It's by Sue Monk Kidd. She's a very famous author, and it's historical fiction. So it's about a girl, Sarah, who was the daughter of a plantation owner, and about Hetty, who was a slave girl given to Sarah as a birthday present when she was 10 years old. And so these girls grew up side by side, Sarah, the plantation owner's daughter, and Hetty, the slave girl. So this is Sarah speaking, and she's speaking to Hetty, who she calls Handful. I'm 27 years old, Handful, and this is my life now. She looked around the room, up at the chandelier, and back at me. This is my life, right here for the rest of my days. Her voice broke as she covered her mouth with her hand. She was trapped, same as me, but she was trapped by her mind, by the minds of people around her, not by the law. At the African church, Mr. Vasey used to say, be careful, you can get enslaved twice, once in your body and once in your mind. I tried to tell her that. I said, my body might be a slave, but not my mind. For you, it's the other way around. And as I read that book, I realized that even though I looked on the outside like I was successful and had a great family, great job, things were going well, I was enslaved on the inside. And that's what I was seeing in the other women around me. And people may not know, but the name Libera comes from the state motto, Montani Semper Liberi, mountaineers are always free. And Libera is the feminine form of the word liberi. It means free. So I wanted to help other women and girls become free in their minds, not just their bodies, but in their minds as well. So,
yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing some of your personal journey that led you to where you are. I think that friendship thread is very powerful. Even like your friends, you showing up for them in a great time of need for them, and taking that need and turning it into something really powerful. To the description of freedom being physical freedom, which I think a lot of people can understand and grasp, but it's that having freedom of the mind, or the opposite of that, having slavery of the mind. Why do you think you yourself or other women that you have known, and the girls and women that we work with, where do you think that freedom of the mind comes from with the people that we work with?
Where does it come from, or how is it like held back? Which one?
So what is holding us back? What is creating the cage of the mind?
I think a lot of it is societal pressures. I think we don't have to cave to societal pressures. Obviously, we have a choice, but I think a lot of it is the way that girls are taught and feel as they're growing up. Like they have to fit in a certain mold, or they have to compare themselves to everyone else. And I honestly think that social media has been playing a big part. Obviously, when I grew up, that wasn't part of it, and I still have the same issues. But I think that social media definitely amplifies the problems, because everyone, girls and boys included, but I think girls in particular, are looking at the way other girls look on social media, the way they present themselves, the things they have, the things they do. And so there's this comparison game. And I think a lot of the comparison is where we get the barriers in our minds that's talked about in that quote. I think that's why our minds aren't free. And I think it takes a conscious effort to overcome those lies. There are lies there, and I think also some of the lies can come from traumatic things that happened in our past. I think some of the lies can come from our families. Like, I had a great family growing up, but I think a lot of times even perceived things. It may not even be things that happen to you, but you perceive, oh, people see me a certain way, or they think I'm a certain way. Like I've heard people say of their families, oh, I'm the one that everybody thinks is stupid, or I'm the one that can't do anything right. Or, so I think it can come from that. It can come from sometimes bullying, or things that kids have said to you as you're growing up. I think those are all places where our minds can get trapped, where we can start to believe the lies. And I know that a lot of the girls and women that we work with, they will say it's from their family experiences, or it's from their school experiences, or maybe something traumatic happened to them, traumatic experiences that caused them to start feeling less than, cause them to feel that way.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, I think it's a Dove commercial where they ask the girls, like younger girls, throw like a girl, run like a girl, and they do this really powerful throw, or they do this really powerful run, and then they ask like teenage girls, throw like a girl, run like a girl, and they're just like flailing their arms and look super weak. And we can all can picture when someone says throw like a girl, they mean it as almost like a derogatory thing. But that stark difference between asking the young girls, like thinking about, you said it was 7th grade, right? When you organized the track team, and then you said you kind of lost that. Like, where did that go? It just made me think, as you were talking about that commercial, before we start hitting, that puberty age, middle school, high school, where that comparison and fitting in really starts to become a big part in shaping who we are. We kind of lose ourselves a little bit and lose that little girl that thought she was strong and powerful and could use her voice to organize or right or wrong, and stand up for something that she believed in. And I think that's a representation of what you're talking about a little bit, and where that cage comes from for the mind is a lot of it's outside of ourselves.
Definitely. And I think research shows that too, that when girls reach puberty, that's when, right before or during puberty, is when they lose their confidence. That's what research is showing.
Yeah, and I think the research is up to 30% or more loss in confidence, which is pretty big. Like, think about how important those teenage years are in shaping in what do you want to be when you grow up, what do you want to pursue, what do you want for the future. And if we're not challenging those lies or challenging those influences, it can really hold you back from reaching that full potential that you might have seen for yourself when you were younger, when you wanted to be a paleontologist or a music therapist. And I think that's why the work that Libera does, and I think there's a shift of working with maybe women and then teen girls, and now a big focus on working with girls when they're in middle school. Can you talk about that evolution a little bit? Because I think it probably has a lot to do with what we just talked about, trying to get to girls before they let those outside influences really determine who they become.
Yes. So when I started Libera, it was just women around my age, in fact, because I got a group of friends together and we went to a cabin and we talked about what could Libera be. And we met for months after that together, just talking about, and that's how we came up with the Libera model. Really, it was a group of women from diverse backgrounds. But during the first year of Libera, I remember distinctly sitting on the bus and meeting with some leaders from Girls on the Run, and they said, you need to be doing this with teen girls, because these problems, the lies, the difficulties, the cage in your mind, that starts earlier, and we need to be doing things to help head that off and prevent it. And then I was on the board of RDVIC at the time, and so I was meeting with some of the different advocates in the area, and they said the same thing. They said, you need to be doing this with middle school and high school girls. And honestly, I thought the Libera model and workbook would be too much for middle school and high school girls, so I hadn't really considered that. And then we said, okay, let's try it. So we started out with high school girls, and then there was a group of sixth graders, a youth group, that wanted to do the group, so we did that group. And I sat in, I wasn't the leader, but I sat in on some of the group sessions, and I thought, oh, these sixth grade girls, like, they know what's going on, like this is definitely not over their head. They're so aware. They're so emotionally aware compared to when, like, I was a sixth grader. So I saw, number one, that it was, it was okay to do it with those younger ages, and not only okay, but it could have a big impact on them and help them before they, got to be an adult and were already stuck in the patterns that I got stuck in. And as I thought about it, I think like seventh grade was where I was still feeling pretty strong as a girl and a woman. And then things changed after that. So we really tried to start focusing in more on youth, and especially at-risk youth, because we felt like we could make the biggest difference there. You can make a bigger difference if you help them when they're younger, and helping some of those that are more at risk.
I think that's a good point too. Like, seventh grade when you were in school, or even when I was in school, is a lot different than seventh grade for girls now, with the phones and the social media and the extra comparison and pressure. And I think we see a lot of that too, and the statistics and the data from even the CDC, and a lot of the increases in mental health concerns for girls, whether it's depression or anxiety, a lot of that starts trending up when you see the introduction of the smartphone, and just have trended in an upward trajectory since then. So I think it is important. I know we're working with sixth grade girls, even talking about working with fifth grade girls, getting to them when they're younger, before some of these things really start to take root, and the lies really start to get really loud and overpower the truths. Could you talk a little bit about what are some of the lies that you hear a lot from girls that we do the groups with?
Sure. So a big one is the main lie that I've had: you're not enough. That's a big one. But I would also say that a lot of girls and women have the lie, you're too much. And then we hear the lies, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm a failure. Those are huge lies, and those are really common lies. And I'm going to go back to one of the earlier groups in Libera. We had a group on the bus, and there was a homeless woman who was maybe 20 years old, and then there was a lawyer on the bus, and they were both in the same group. And I don't even remember the lie that they had, but they both had the exact same lie. And so they were talking about it in the group, and I just think that's fascinating. It doesn't matter where you are in life. It doesn't matter how successful you are. We all have these lies. And so even though we're focusing more on at-risk youth and young women, I feel anyone can benefit from a Libera group, because we all do have the lies, whether we're aware of them or not, consciously or subconsciously. We all have them, and they hold us back.
Yeah, even in your story, you were saying how outwardly you looked very successful and like you had it all together, but even you were being held back by the lies and barriers and things in your story. And I think that's so powerful, thinking about a woman who is unhoused and one who's a lawyer, and they're both dealing with the same lie.
Yes.
I think that's something really common we see in the groups too, is a lot of the girls, once they start to build that trust and feel comfortable sharing, they might have thought that a lie was just something that they were struggling with, but then they hear it repeated by other girls in the group, and they start to realize that they're not the only one and they're not alone. And I think there's such power in that, because I feel like when you believe those lies in isolation, it gives them that extra power. But one, if you say them out loud, and then if you see that, oh, other people are dealing with this too, and you look at that person, you're like, well, they seem really successful, but they're dealing with that lie too. Then you start to believe like, oh, I don't have to be limited by this thing. And we all suffer from lies too, but how much do you believe the lie over the truth? And so can you talk a little bit about the truth part of the groups, and how do people kind of take a step to overcome those lies?
I want to tag on to what you're saying there a little bit, though, because I think that is one of the biggest things that happens in the groups is the girls hear each other's lies and they realize, oh, we all have these lies. You know, it's the first time they've realized all of us have these lies. And I want to say that for people listening, they might be thinking, oh, middle school and high school girls, and they're going to be vulnerable and share their lies with each other. Well, the thing is we thought at the beginning, oh, maybe they'll use these against each other, you know, use them as gossip or fodder or bullying. But that's not what we found at all. Actually, we find that they support each other, want to help each other. You know, the crosstalk in the groups, girls helping girls, girls supporting girls is just beautiful. So the truth. Yeah, we actually, in the groups, we have girls and young women list out the lies that they believe about themselves and put it on paper. And then we ask them to go inside themselves and think about examples of truth to counter the lies. And I think that's really important because, you know, we could sit there as facilitators and counter their lies and say, oh, no, you're not stupid. You're smart, you know. But what we need them to do, and what's so helpful, is to have them go inside themselves and think about, okay, now where is the truth that can counter this lie? And that's how they can begin to overcome them. They list out the lies, then they list out a truth opposite it on the paper to counter those lies. And it takes time, and I think it does take encouragement from other people too. But as you begin to focus on the truths and realize the lies aren't real and list them out, I think it helps them to move forward and find transformation.
Yeah, it helps build that confidence.
Yes.
Too. And I feel like, I can't remember what the law or theory is. Whenever you see something or you think something, you start finding proof to support that thing. Like if you buy a red car and then you start seeing a red car, well, if I believe this truth about myself now, I'm going to keep finding other things throughout my daily life to support that truth about myself, instead of finding all the things to support that lie about yourself.
Yes.
Can you think of maybe one story or one girl or one bus ride that you were on at the beginning of Libera when you were driving the bus around? Is there any one story or two stories that have really kind of stuck out to you over this almost 9-year journey now since you started Libera?
Oh, there's so many stories I could think of. One just happened last week, and it wasn't a group I was in, but I was told about it, that there was a group that we were doing with some of the girls in incarceration. And one of the girls said after the group, this is the first time I've ever felt my worth. And that just brings me to tears to think, you know, that she's high school age and that's the first time that she's ever felt her worth. So it speaks to the value of listening to them and validating them, but also the power of, you know, what can happen, the transformation that can take place. Somebody can finally feel their worth and not feel worthless.
Yeah, that's a transformational change in belief, to think that I'm unworthy or I have no value, and especially for a girl that's in incarceration, to believe that she does have value and worth, and she could have an impact in her own life or the life of others. Could be hugely transformational. Especially at such an early time in your life.
So I'll tell you one story and then just one impactful thing. The story is about a girl in one of the first groups that we did in a high school. I won't say which one, but we did a group at a high school, and this girl she said her lie was, I'm stupid. And we said, well, where did that lie come from? And she said, well, last year in one of my classes, the principal said, you're not very smart, right? In front of the whole class.
Mm.
And so she felt like she was stupid.
Yeah.
And as we were talking with her, we said, well, what's evidence that, you're smart, that you have common sense? And she gave us a bunch of evidence. Well, I'm really good at this class. I'm good at this subject. I'm good at this. My family knows I have common sense, But later we were doing some videos, and she was talking in the video, and she just said that she discovered that she was one heck of a perfect person.
Oh.
And I thought that was so powerful,
Yeah.
that she discovered, that she's perfect just the way she is. And that's always stuck with me, that one. But
also the power of negative words and the power of positive words. Like for a principal to say in front of a classroom of people that you're not that smart.
Yes.
That's really impactful to a young
Yes, it is.
Kid. And imagine if she didn't have somebody come along and challenge that belief.
Yes.
I don't know what she went on to do, but she might not even bother to try to go to college or further her education when you have such a pivotal person saying that to you. And to go from believing that you're stupid to believing that you're perfect or perfectly imperfect human is pretty huge.
There's one other impactful thing. It's not really a story, but I know that right now I could count on my hand at least 5 people that have told me I'm here still alive because of Libera.
Wow.
And that's very powerful, that I know who these people are, and I know what's happened in their lives, and they're saying I'm still alive because someone or something in Libera helped support me and helped me through a really tough time. And so that's just very powerful to me.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what are you most proud of? That might be one of those.
Yes.
That might answer that question at the same time.
Yes, I think that would be part of it for sure. I'm feeling like we're making a difference, and I see transformation. And so I'm proud of that I can see women and girls whose lives have been transformed, and women and girls who maybe did get shut down or were going to be shut down, and then they find the freedom to follow their path. They find the freedom to follow their dreams. They find the freedom to follow their heart's desire and be who they really are. And I've seen that over and over and over again. So I feel very proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only do they want to live out their dreams, but I feel like oftentimes we see them trying to bring other girls or women along with them.
Yes.
Oftentimes the girls that we interact with, they want to help others. And so that ripple effect just goes out. It's not measurable how far the ripples are whenever you help one girl live out her full potential and achieve her dreams and take her power back. She wants to pass that on to others, which is so exciting to me. And that's not something that we'll ever be able to measure the impact of what you started with Libera as one woman trying to make a difference in her friends' lives, and then her life, and then other women's lives and girls across the state, and you inviting other people to come alongside and be a part of that journey, and to have girls walking around that might no longer be walking around, and the fact that they want to take their journey to help other people and influence and impact in a positive way, to me it's changing our community and our state and the world from the inside out, just one person at a time, which is so huge. And it all started with you taking it upon yourself to do something and to come up with a solution to help others. And that's so powerful.
Full disclosure, last week I texted my therapist. I'm no longer talking to him, but I talked to him for many years. And I just said, thank you, because my therapist, along with some different materials and some Brene Brown things I was listening to, really helped me to get to the point where I realized these lies and I could move forward to start Libera. And so I told him, thank you. And I said, there wouldn't be a Libera without you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm just paying it forward. And so I really hope that, like you said, that everybody that's impacted by Libera is going to pay it forward to other people.
And just think if every person chose to pay it forward one time, what a big difference that would make in the world. If there's someone who's listening and they're thinking about this dream that they have right now and something they've been thinking about for a long time, but they just haven't been able to put their ideas into action, or maybe they don't believe in their idea enough yet, what would you tell them would be the next best thing that they could do to make that idea become a reality, like your idea of starting a nonprofit and starting Libera, and you've brought that into a reality? What's one thing that you would tell them, or even think about if you could go back and tell yourself, I guess, before you took the leap on Libera, or when you were working with your therapist or consulting with others, something that was really impactful for helping you take that next step to make it happen?
Well, I would say you should look at your lies hard and replace them with truth. But really, I think the biggest thing is deciding to live out of love rather than fear. I think that's something my therapist talked to me a lot about.
Yeah.
And you've heard this before, but when I started Libera, it was, there's a lot to be afraid of. You're starting something. I mean, I sat around the first week, and Teresa and Gigi both know this, but I would go to coffee with them each week, like, what am I doing? How am I going to do this? So I think that we can choose to live from love or from fear. And so you just make the choice to live from love. And it's not that you aren't afraid. You're afraid still, but you just take the steps and decide to live from love. I would get into the Libera bus the first year. I mean, that was an adventure in and of itself, getting a bus and outfitting it. But I would sit in the driver's seat and I would actually say to myself, you can do this, Karen. You can do it, because I would be afraid of driving the bus, afraid of, what I'm doing. But I would just say, choose love instead of choosing fear.
So love is one of the 3 Libera values. But the most important one, which we haven't talked about quite yet, is listen. And then the third is learn. But I think you would say that the most important one is listening, and is really one of the founding principles of Libera and the foundation of everything that we do. It starts and ends with listening at Libera. Could you talk a little bit about why listening is so important, why we've seen it be so important in your life, and why was everything that was created at Libera centered on the concept of listening to others?
Yes. So I think it started with my therapist, because he was somebody I had known already from the past before he became a therapist, and him listening to me and hearing everything and also validating me was huge. That was what I think created the transformation, knowing that somebody listened to me. But at the same time, I also went to some conferences where I was hearing about emotional health. And the quote that I'm actually seeing right across the room from me is by David Augsburger: being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. And I heard that quote early on. I think that was in 2014. So Libera started in 2015. I heard that quote, and we talked about listening at this conference. And I thought, wow, this is something. Like, this is the key. And my husband and I actually learned a skill about listening, and it was very powerful for both of us. And I thought, this has potential to change people's lives if they're really listened to. So it's a combination of being listened to by my therapist, going to these conferences, hearing this quote, and practicing it myself that showed me this can help transform people's lives, just the act of listening.
Mm-hmm. And how have you seen that in real life with Libera, whether it's working with mentors? I feel a lot of them say that they've become a better listener in their own personal life because of Libera and being trained how to be listened, or how to listen to others, but then also the act of them being listened to as well. And then, of course, for girls going through Libera groups or being a part of the Libera community, how have you seen listening really be impactful in the work that we do?
So I don't think listening happens very much in our world. I don't think people usually have the patience and the time to listen. And so we hit that really hard in Libera, and we talk about it with our mentors a lot and our staff. And what I've seen happen is, let's use schools or juvenile detention as an example, doing our groups. Really, you can't help anyone overcome lies or help them with their barriers or help them if they're being bullied or they're anxious or depressed or suicidal. You can't help them if you don't even know they have that issue. And so usually what we find is we have kids tell us all the time, oh, I've never told anyone this, or I don't talk to adults about this. So if you're a great listening ear, the first thing that's going to happen, and that we see happen all the time, is someone's going to tell you their deepest, darkest thoughts and their needs, where they need help. And so that's just huge. And then part of our listening is, when we train people to listen well, it's validating someone. So validating their feelings, validating their emotions. Yes, your feelings are real. Of course you feel that way. It's understandable. Anyone in your situation would feel that way. And people don't get validated either. So I think the combination of listening ear, the patience to hear what the issues are people are facing, and then also validating their feelings is the beginning of opening the door to helping people find transformation and find help for whatever they're facing.
Yeah, obviously we train people to listen without the need to respond and listening judgment free.
Yes.
Which I feel like that doesn't happen very much at all. Just listening to somebody, whatever they have to say or whatever they're going through, without judgment, and then also listening with that empathy without the need to respond or chime in or share about how you can relate to their story. It's all about them and really meeting them where they are. No matter what they say or no matter what they're going through. And that really helps the love part happen for people. Because I think a lot of girls and women would say they've never had anybody listen to their story or care enough to ask, which is really sad. So even just that act of being able to share about your life and what you've been through and what you're experiencing is really an act of love for a lot of the girls. I've been on the receiving end of your listening, and you're definitely the best listener that I can think of that I've had the pleasure of knowing in my life. I think a lot of people would say the same thing about you, and so you really model that value well, and I think that's why Libera's gotten to where Libera is today, is because of you modeling that value to listen and love and learn. I am not alive walking around today because of you and Libera, but I do have a job because of you and Libera. And so I'm especially grateful to be on this journey and that you took that leap of love and weren't held back by your fear or your lies to start something that's been so transformational for the state. I think a lot of the staff or the Libera volunteer community joined Libera because we wanted to help make a difference for others. But I think a lot of us have been personally impacted by being a part of the community and being a part of Libera. I joined as a volunteer because I had a passion for empowering girls and then formed that relationship and connection with you, probably a lot because of your listening skills. And we had a lot of the same passions and hopes and dreams for girls. And you invited me to participate as a staff person and really helped give me the permission to believe in myself and build my confidence and believe that I could bring some of my dreams into reality like you did when you started Libera. And so just even me being one person impacted by the journey that you started and getting to be a part of that journey too. I'm so appreciative of that and getting to be a part of the Libera story. And I think a lot of staff would say the same thing.
It's been a privilege to work with you.
Yeah. I, of course, chose to become a part of the Libera journey and story in a big way as a staff person. But what would you say to other people that might be listening? Maybe they don't know that much about Libera. Maybe they're curious of getting involved. What's one thing that you would say to them if they're a little bit on the fence that you would want them to know about Libera, or what's one way that they could be involved with what we do?
Yes, so there are a number of ways that people could be involved. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this work has given me so much purpose and so much meaning. And I feel like I've been living out love in my life. So I know if I died tomorrow, I'd feel good about how I've spent my time and that I've lived it with purpose. And I want that for other people. I really do. And so I would say for other people, I would love to see them get involved with Libera. We're always looking for mentors, and mentors can be trained. You go through a Libera group and you go through a training, but as Kelsey's already mentioned, you can be transformed. We find that women say they're transformed by going through the materials, even though they might come along and say, I want to mentor young girls or young women or do groups. I feel like when they go through the materials, in fact, we just had someone say this. I was the one that was transformed by going through these materials. So I would encourage people to look into that. If you become trained as a Libera mentor, you can do one-on-one mentoring with young women. You can also help facilitate Libera groups for middle school and high school age girls. So that's one way that people can get involved. Another thing that's a way to get involved in something that's coming up is we are almost to the point of purchasing a building. And so there are going to be lots of opportunities for people to get involved in helping with the building. And if you want to know more about this, you can go to our website, liberawv.com, and I would encourage everyone to go there if they want to get involved. But there are going to be a lot of service opportunities, an hour here, 2 hours there, a day here, for people to do all kinds of different things. So that's another way that people can get involved. Another way people can get involved is by helping us network around the state. We really want to be in every county in the state doing our programs. So if you know people or places that might want to do Libera groups, or, people that might want to become a mentor, then to tell them. And also financial support. So again, if you go to our website, we're raising funding right now for a down payment for this building that hopefully we will be getting in January. And so
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So that would be another opportunity for people, is maybe you can't be involved in the work right now, but you could give financially to help support the work. And let me tell you, those financial donations make a huge difference in the lives of girls and young women. So that's another way people could get involved. And I might say that my role is going to be changing here in the future pretty soon. So we have been working on a succession plan. My husband recently retired, and I'm going to be stepping down as executive director at the end of March. And Kelsey is going to be taking over as executive director. And I'm very excited about this. Kelsey and I have been working together for years, actually. At the beginning, she helped lead some Libera groups for college girls. really in the beginning. And then we've kind of kept in touch. And a few years back, we got together for coffee, and she said she was thinking about working with foster youth. And I said I was thinking about working with foster youth. And I don't know, we've always just had this synergy and meeting of the minds. And so Kelsey has been working with me for the past couple years to do this succession plan to become executive director. And I am so excited because Kelsey has unique abilities. She's not only very organizational, administrative, very financially minded. She has an accounting background, but she's also super creative. If you see the STEAM activity boxes, you'll know what I mean. Go to our website. That's Kelsey's STEAM activity boxes. You'll see her creativity. But she also has a lot of passion, the relationship thing. She has passion to help transform women and girls' lives. And she's visionary. So you don't usually find all of those things in one person, but they are all in Kelsey. And honestly, I feel like if I stayed on as executive director, I would be holding Libera back. That's how I feel about it. Kelsey's going to take Libera to new places. So never fear, Karen will always be part of Libera. I'll be working in the background.
Fear, Karen is here.
I will be working in the background, doing some, part-time work, maybe helping with things, but I will be in the background. I won't be around the office, and Kelsey will be leading. She's already really leading the organization, and I'm just kind of here until we finish the transition plan. But I wanted people to know that because I'm very excited about where Libera is headed, and the future is bright with Kelsey. So thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you, Karen, for saying that. I really appreciate your kind words, and I have big shoes to fill for what you started. I feel honored that you've trusted me to help take it into the future and grow it, but none of it would have been possible without your vision and your leadership. So thank you for what you've contributed, and thank you for what you've contributed to me personally.
You're welcome.
It's funny to think back to the first time I ever saw an opportunity to volunteer with Libera, this new nonprofit to empower girls. And I was like, I want to do that. And I texted or emailed you, and I didn't know you at the time. And then, like you said, we led the first Libera groups, and then always kind of stayed in touch. Mm-hmm. And if you would have asked me whenever I texted that phone number probably 8 years ago,
right,
if I would be involved in this capacity, it wouldn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. But I feel very blessed and humbled to be a part of Libera's journey. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel bright. It's going to be a bright future. I'm excited.
Yeah. One last question. What is your hope or dream for the future? And it can be not Libera related, or it could be Libera related, or vision or hope or dream for girls in West Virginia, or something personal that you are excited about in retirement, since it's not that far away.
Yes. So I have a mixture of answers for that.
Okay.
First, I'm going to go back to the listen, learn, love values that I came up with for the Libera mentors at the beginning. It's just the idea of I want to do that well with my family and friends and circle of people. So listen with empathy and without judgment to everyone, learn about someone and learn from them, and love people as they are where they are. And I still have room to grow in those things, so I want to do that well with my family and circle of friends. The next thing is I want to spend a lot more time at our cabin. We have a cabin in rural West Virginia, and Tim gets to go there all the time. And I've hardly been there lately, so I'm looking forward to spending a lot of time at the cabin. It's
Love
just
it. You deserve it.
Yeah. And then the final thing is my dream is for Libera to be in every single county of West Virginia doing our programs. We are working all across the state right now, but it's in pockets. And I really want to see Libera impacting youth and young women in every county. And I think that's very possible. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that just to say we're everywhere. I want it because I see the kind of transformation that can take place and the kind of mental and emotional health needs that could be met through having Libera programs and helping build brighter futures for youth and young women in West Virginia so they're free to achieve their dreams. So I really hope that happens. That's a big dream.
Me too. I hope that happens too.
Yes. And I think it will for you.
We'll see. Well, thank you for sharing some of your story and sharing about how Libera got started and what that's looked like for you and what's been the most impactful part of the journey for you. We wish you nothing but the best in your retirement, although you're not really going anywhere,
Right.
but just taking a well-deserved time away to focus on some other things. And of course, we'll still be involved.
Yes.
With Libera. But thank you for me personally, and thank you from everybody that's been a part of the Libera community or been impacted by Libera in some way. The ripples are immeasurable from what you created.
You're welcome.
So thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank all of the volunteers, all of the staff, all of the donors over all the years that have made Libera possible. So thank you.
Thank you.